All right, hello everyone. It is time for a relatively short update, relatively short video, he says, before the video ends up being like 6 hours long. But yeah, today on JP we had an update and we had extended maintenance because there was some issues. And yeah, there isn't really too terribly much else to say about that. It's just kind of the way it is. I was playing Battle Network on stream tonight while also doing some Wotv, but yeah, we got some new stuff today, so let's take a look at it. My screen is very tiny, but don't worry. With a little bit of aid, we will get it looking bigger. So today, obviously, the big news for people who are looking around is Hyoh. Hyoh as well as the new free character. We have some equipment upgrades, and we're going to take a look at that briefly. But a lot of FFBE stuff. But the big thing, I think, is really noteworthy here is getting a character and their VC in the same week. Now, could be another VC next week, could be the Duan VC, could be relatively nothing, but with Golden Week coming up, probably going to be something really huge announced. If we're getting a character and a VC, I mean, that's just a busy week for JP. So yeah, Hyoh has come to the game, and for people who are curious about what he's like on JP, I'll run his limit burst animation just for good, visual flair. But there isn't too terribly much interesting here that I think a lot of people are going to be interested in, because looking over both his VC and the character, there's almost entirely, I can't really spot any differences. I mean, maybe like nothing stood out. The VC is the exact same without the exclusivity buffs that came with it. And taking a look at Hyoh himself, basically just the exact same character. Now, I've read the comments and I've read what people have said, and yeah, Hyoh is interesting by the sounds of it because his counter is actually really decent at restoring a good amount of HP to be annoying. And if you take a look at overall in his kit, I mean, he's not a weak character as it turns out. But the thing about Hyoh that I think is really telling is that he doesn't really have a character partner on JP. Essentially, yeah, he's a perfectly good, competent character, but he doesn't really fit in with anything that a lot of others are doing. Hyoh, if he wants more accuracy, needs to really focus heavily on accuracy, and he can still fail because his kit doesn't necessarily have enough to potentially overcome evasion of characters like Yuffie and whatnot. Whereas if you look at pairing him with magic, it's just not a good pairing. There isn't anything that he's really doing for those characters that boosts them up, other than having like one physical and one magical, and therefore you have to protect maybe against both. And as for characters like Setia, the problem with characters like Setia is that, I mean, Setia still has her issues. She has issues with accuracy, she has issues with range, she has issues with, needing extra sources of DPS, which, yes, if you are lucky enough to have Dark Ifrit, you can really push a fire team to be a lot better than without. But at the end of the day, Hyoh, especially for JP, without some of the extra buffs that Global has, feels more of a tough sell, more of a difficult that anybody really needs this character before we see like the next fire character that potentially goes with him. Personally, my opinion as a JP player hasn't changed. I think that, yeah, I think better of him now than my initial impression, where his sub jobs just seem so bad. He has proven on Global that he can be quite good, but with missing some of the buffs, without like a character that incredibly well synergizes with him, because Fire Evasion is just better as being Fire Evasion, Fire Magic is just better being Fire Magic, and Hyoh is more of a fair character than either of those two comps right now, because Fire Magic deals in some status effects, and Fire Evasion just hopes that the enemy can't hit Hyoh at all. So yeah, like if you look at where Fire is, Hyoh doesn't exactly have a partner character yet. Although, you know, he can have some good synergies with what's out there, it just doesn't feel worthy of a 100 cost permanent character. So Hyoh, perfectly reasonable to build and gotten later, but spending enough to pity him right now seems really bad idea, because there's very obviously a major collaboration right around the corner that probably will have a stronger character. Seems reasonable? I hope. So yeah, Hyoh has come out, and yeah, talking about the VC character, Ultima Bringer, if there are any stat changes that I've missed, sorry, just tired, but yeah, seems just a little bit lacking versus some of the stuff that's out on JP now. Now, as for a few other things, few upgrades, the Swordbreaker first is getting upgraded. Now has a reaction block rate of 40 and an increased slash of 10, which isn't bad, but I don't know, it's fine. Taking a look at Kuro Kasumi, I can get that name right. The big upgrade that we're getting here for 6-star is increased slash attack by 10, which is fine, but again, rather unremarkable. At least the assault gets a nice boost, as well does accuracy for both of those. So perfectly fine ninja sword. And last but not least, Cataract, which looks to be getting more missile attack by 5. Seems like the same amount of reaction block. Yeah, it is. So again, fairly fine upgrades if you are looking to upgrade one of the characters that uses these pieces of equipment. And the last thing to talk about is Galzak. And Galzak is probably my favorite thing in today's update. I haven't perused like too much of the actual system updates yet, because I can't even remember what they are at the time of this recording. But let's talk about Galzak really quickly here, because yeah, I think that this is the best thing to come out of the update. An MR Earth 50 cost character with 3 move, 1 jump, time jump, white mage, staff, devout is the group that he's in, hat, clothing, accessory. As for his TMR, pretty unremarkable. Healing power up can be useful in certain characters, and you know, could be just generally good enough on him, but overall the TMR feels just so-so, which MR, I guess. As for the master ability here, we're looking at 10% HP, confusion resistance, spirit penetration, and AoE resistance with the dream ability of HP and healing power up. So really quickly, you should tell that this is basically just a healing character. Looking at resistances, Elemental is exactly what you'd think. Pretty weak across multiple physical types, including Strike, which could be scary because there are Strike characters floating around. But even then, he isn't particularly resilient, so you definitely want a character to draw attention off of him, like some kind of character with hate up. Otherwise, this character will be probably smushed fairly easily. Looking at his supports, defense and spirit of 15, magic attack of 30, a decrease down to 8, and skill activation time decreased by 200. Nullify haste, slow, stop, quicken. Nullify doom with an increase of magic, and decrease skill activation time again. As for his counter, chance to counter all damage and increase HP, chance to counter damage and cost slow, which could be interesting in certain spots if enemies were weak to slow, and chance to counter all damage with regen. Now, counters and supports here aren't particularly exciting. Scrolling down, of course, he has no limit burst because he is an MR. White Mage, he got Isuna, he got healing spells, he got Protect, Revive, Shell, Restore HP, and Holy. Now, no full life and no re-raise. Not that those were necessarily on the docket of possibilities, but He does have a raise spell, which is pretty good, and he does have some healing options. So there's, and 100% hit chance isn't terrible either, since he does have a little bit of extra in DPS. As for Time Mage, kind of what you would expect. Float, slow, haste, stop, and immobilize. Nothing too terribly amazing here, but good enough. And either Time Mage or White Mage gives enough value over AoE resistance / resistance, which is only on him, which isn't too terribly exciting, and a healing ability, which also isn't very exciting. So yeah, he has the increased earth attack, decreased skill activation time for himself, increased debuff resistance. He can increase max HP for himself, and that gets upgraded for, a good amount of bonuses for himself and allies that he casts it upon. The increasing buff and the damage ability with fairly good range with a chance to inflict sleep. So all of this stuff just seems okay. So what's the big thing that I think is actually valuable, really, really valuable here? His job level 25, restore HP to 10 with a restore HP and restore AP. Basically an Ayaka like insta heal on a massive AoE. We've seen these be good before, and I think they are quite still good now. For upgrading him up to 140, this is an instant ability. So if you are going on this character, you're going all the way. MR essentially free to get, free to upgrade, free to improve, which are all really, really, really good things, in this age of constant 100 cost characters. And, an Earth healer. Earth is a pretty strong element right now and can potentially do some really interesting low cost things. So yeah, I mean, a mage character that is very low cost, that's a little bit newer, that hits healing potential and revive potential, might be good enough to actually be used most of the time. Taking a look, I mean, yes, a lot of his abilities do have casting time, but he has a fair amount of reduction in it, and I think his job level 25 is just good enough to be used. Now, is it going to be as broken as someone like Resnick? No, just no, but lower cost unit, so what are you going to do? Like, honestly, I want to say, like, oh, I'm disappointed in this, because overall, his kit feels fine. It just fine. It feels generally good, but it doesn't feel incredible. But that's not, like, I want to say that his job level 25 is a really valuable ability in the sense that that insta-cast heal can be the difference between winning and losing, providing you keep his hatred down and really focus on him as a support. With Time Mage, it definitely could be something that Earth really, really wants. I'm not an Earth Master, but an Earth Time Mage in combination with some good massive heals is probably just good enough. And so he's very focused on just doing those two things, and I think he does them quite well. So yes, as for the update today, I mean, some upgraded 6-star pieces of equipment. Hyoh, which I think is totally a fair unit, but not worth a pity. Let's put it that way. Like, the way... One last thing. If I look at a character nowadays, a 100 cost character that is not limited, they really have to either blow me away because I could potentially get them later as an off banner, or they kind of have to be a character that I really like. And Hyoh doesn't tick those boxes, either of those boxes for me right now. The future coming collaboration doesn't even factor into it. It's just, right now, it's not his time on JP. And I think he will eventually find a team that really, really wants him, because he has really potential to go a long distance. But for now, as in terms of just the timing and everything on JP, complete and total pass for me. But again, not a bad unit. I said it. As for Galzak, he's a free character, so it's hard to be too hard on him, because you're really just getting him for playing the game. But also, there's a fair amount where it feels like this character might not be good enough in most parties, and definitely will probably kind of require a little bit of careful building and this right equipment to really make him shine. But that being said, Earth has King Bradley. Earth has Baylor. Earth can do an incredibly low-cost, effective, high-power team that I think is really, really good. So yeah, I'm going to say that Galzak is probably better than I initially think, because I think he's just fair. Because that instacast heal and just haste is probably enough for him to be valuable for a build and just cheap on resources. So anyway, that is the JP update, such as it is. No word really yet about anything to do with yeah, no word yet on any kind of live stream next week, just because there hasn't been one yet. I don't know. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Take care and see ya later.